Plane of Existence, Chapter 4, Fade into Fables. Dasakata was in a panic. She had been seen. That was against the code and very troublesome. The girl with the raven black hair and stunning green eyes had actually talked to her. She didn't understand it, but she knew who would. You see, the Pixie language is quite different than the human language. At one time, they'd known how to communicate with humans, but after the last war, had decided to cease contact with them. Dasakata twirled her long white hair streaked with glimmering lavender. Lost in thought, she ruminated on how to solve the problem she'd created for herself. Her wings fluttered sporadically with each negative emotion. Pixie wings often have a mind of their own. They don't resemble those of a butterfly, as is so often depicted in human picture books. They're much stronger than that. They are made out of colorful feathers in beautiful patterns, much like peacocks. In the dark, the Fae are often mistaken for lightning bugs because of their translucent skin and grulapa, or chest light, which is a glowing membrane surrounding the heart and dims or glows with the varying of emotions. Of course, they can control this mechanism, and it is often in use on the darkest of nights. The acute vision of the pixie is much more useful during the day. Most of the time, young pixies are inside the willow when darkness falls, except for in the autumn when everyone is busy working and getting ready for the splishata, or long sleep, which is akin to hibernation. Dasakata, the only daughter of stick gatherers, lives at the top of the willow inside one of the hollow branches. This particular willow, however, had been enchanted so that it was not harmed by the creatures residing within it. The entrance to their community is at the top of the trunk, a small hole that one could easily mistake for a squirrel's nest. Once inside, a vast network of hallways lead to individual homes. The center of the trunk was a large, winding staircase that goes to every area within the enchanted willow. Those with less important duties are assigned by the Ajara, queen, to live in the top branches, which has less space. The lower branches are thicker with vaster amounts of space. They are occupied by those with very important functions within the community, such as the pollen collectors and council members to the Ajara. To sustain themselves, the pixies eat the pollen of the flowers. Having to compete with the birds and the bees for their supply, they become very busy near the end of the summer, working furiously to gather enough stores to eat at the Okenchatka, final feast, before retiring for the winter. Unlike birds that fly south, the pixies stay snug in their domek vilava, home willow. Back when the humans had believed in them, they'd often thought that pixie dust was what made fairies fly. They didn't realize it was really just pollen. The humans were so confused that they actually thought it was magic dust that could give a human this ability. Thus, there are many stories within the human culture that speak of it. Dasakata had always been curious about the humans. When she found another uninhabited willow tree, naturally she was drawn to it. Although she was not allowed to leave the forest, she'd made a cozy hideaway there and found herself venturing into a cluster of human homes. While in their realm, she had been observing the black-haired girl and her mother. In the meantime that she'd visited the other willow, Dasakata had learned some words of their language, though not nearly enough to understand most of what they said. This was forbidden as a safety precaution to keep from interfering in their affairs. It had been the code of the fairies for several life cycles now. She was unsure how many in human time. There were steep punishments for trying to communicate with people. The pixies knew that their presence scared some, intrigued others, and generally caused discord between humans who knew about them and those who didn't. The many fables about them had faded into oblivion with the destruction of the Pasdara, pixies that had once held the job of translating the human language. The Pasdara were responsible for controlling the information that humans had about them. However, after they'd secluded themselves from humans, the Pazdara fairies found themselves reassigned. Originally, Dasakata's Mnyam, Ministara, was trained in this profession. Unfortunately, the Pazdara had all but disappeared with their services, were rendered useless. Thus, Ministara became a twig collector and partnered with her Dyadak, Hermest. Yet, there were times when some of the more adventurous young ones would break the code and play tricks on people. Stealing socks, moving keys to strange places, and ringing doorbells were favorites, especially because the humans blamed themselves. However, every pixie knew to never come in contact with an actual human. Dasakata had accidentally broken the sacred rule, and now she didn't know what to do or who to tell. She didn't feel that she could confide in her mother about what had transpired because of the harsh penalties some of the remaining Pazdara had faced. She'd been warned many times to not be too curious about humans. Dasakata wasn't supposed to have been outside the willow when the raven-haired girl approached, and now nothing could change that she'd been seen. On her way back from the realm beyond the forest, she hadn't heard the call of the Hanmarchik, or hornsmen, to seek cover. She wrung her hands and thought about the consequences as she laid in her woven grass hammock. She anxiously stared up at the xylem in the ceiling, tiny tubes that carry water from the roots of the willow to the branches. The network of bluish twisted membranes were part of the beauty of the willow. They were enchanted to cast a glow, providing lights to the pixie quarters. After careful consideration, Dasakata formulated a plan. She would make the girl believe she was a dream. The humans generally slept at night, so after helping her parents with the stick gathering, Dasakata would go to the girl's window and sneak in. When the girl fell asleep, she would convince her that she had been dreaming. It was going to be a harrowing adventure. She thought about the human language and how she was going to learn what to say to her. Dasakata knew that the girl she'd been spying on had been entertained by practicing the old ways, ancient and forbidden knowledge that they were learning from sorcery books, dangerous books for those that didn't have an innate understanding of them. In the morning, Dasakata worked hard alongside her parents, never hinting that there was anything wrong. She smiled at their teasing about Pelavin. He always caught her attention with his bright orange hair and emerald green eyes. Priva Piel, Kokendjelon? Hello, Pel, how are you? Dasakata called to him. He smiled at her and waved but was off to his position and didn't stop to talk. This disappointed her, but she didn't allow herself much time to feel sad. There was too much work to be done. The splashata, long sleep, was coming. After her duties were finished, Dasakata made her secret flight to the girl's window. She was prepared to wait for many hours for the night to come, but was pleasantly surprised when she arrived and saw that she was already in her bed and had drifted off. How curious! Humans also slept during the day? Dasakata searched to find a way into her room. With this house, there was a chimney, the easiest way in for a pixie. She flew as fast as she could to the rooftop and gulped as she stared into the deep, sooty abyss. Taking a deep breath, Dasakata did a nosedive into the dark. The light danced toward her, and within a few seconds she was in a large room. However, it was not the right one. Navigating her way through this enormous space was going to be very challenging. Dasakata flew toward the doorway when she came upon some stairs. She heard footsteps coming and frantically curled into the shadowy corner. Dasakata didn't know how long she stayed there, but she dared not move until quiet fell over the house again. Cautiously, she flew up the steps only to be stopped by another closed door. The crack under it was just large enough for her to squeeze through. It took a great amount of effort, and she pulled out some of her feathers on one of her wings. It stung, and Dasakata examined it. Nothing that wouldn't heal quickly. Finally inside, she saw the girl sprawled out on her bed. Her face was buried in her pillow. She pulled herself up onto the quilt and tread lightly around until she was near the girl's face. Her brilliant green eyes half opened. Obviously, her human senses were telling her that someone was there. Dasakata spoke urgently to her, forgetting the human words that she knew. She pleaded with her, "Tiemniam vide mina! Tiemniam vide mina!" You did not see me. The girl simply shut her eyes and rolled over to her other side, her black hair flicking Dasakata off the bed. She landed with a soft thump and decided to hide under it amongst the clutter. Her plan was to leave when the girl awoke and exited the room rather than risk tearing more feathers on her wing again. Dasakata didn't have to wait long. The girl abruptly woke, and she was in a rush. She heard her mumbling to herself and scurrying about the room. When she opened the door to go, Dasakata was not far behind. Luckily, nobody noticed her as she fluttered down the stairs and out the door after the girl. Dasakata's only goal was to be home before the curfew set in. She had planned on being late and facing council discipline, but the human girl's nap had saved her from this embarrassment. She glided home at a rapid pace to the Pixie Willow with heavy thoughts on her little mind. Had what she done worked? Perhaps she had scared the girl, and that is why she awoke and hurried out. Maybe she was headed here to the willow again. That would be bad. So very, very bad. The other time she came, it had sent the pixies into a panicked hiding. The Hanmalchik had sounded the panlatka, or pan flute. It was like the human pan flute, only very large and made from hollowed-out twigs. It took 5 pixies to play it, and emitted a frequency too high for human ears to hear. It had been used sparingly in the past. The panlatka warned that danger was near. If a pixie could not make it to the willow, they blended into the landscape, hiding behind pine cones, under piles of leaves, or sank into tall grasses. When the girl had visited the Domek Vilava, it had caused an uproar. Elder pixies were even calling for some of the old ways to return in order to scare her from coming again. Old ways included playing nasty tricks, like cutting off all her hair in the middle of the night, stealing one of all of her socks, or putting thorns in her shoes. However, Ajara Jesamin argued against this. In order for the old ways to work, humans had to know that pixies existed and were responsible. Due to their seclusion, belief in them had long been dead. It was not a solution. The orders were to go into hiding if the girl came again, something Dasakata had failed to do, and, of course, she'd been seen. There were many woodland folk that had been in hiding for centuries. The gnomes, neighbors of the pixies, were another species that lived peacefully in the forest without human knowledge. The sad truth was that pixies, gnomes, changelings, shifters, and natural witches had flourished without human contact. Of course, some of them were part human, the witches and shifters, for example. Natural witches were extremely rare and very powerful. They were like other humans, but descended from a single druid whose line had intermingled with otherworldly life. What that was, nobody could say. Most of them didn't even know about themselves. It had been a long time since many Wikanka in the human realm had abandoned the craft. Because of their rarity, the pixies did not worry about them much. Dasakata had stumbled across human girls practicing magic, which should have concerned her. Being so young, only 19 cycles old, she didn't realize the implication. She had observed them high above the cavern walls. The strange thing was their magic was not powerful without the black-haired girl. Oh, they'd managed to do some things on their own before she came. However, nothing like when she was present. Perhaps that is why Dasakata was so curious about her. Safe in the willow, she paced her little room, unable to go to sleep. When she finally retired, she tossed and turned in her hammock, agonizing over what she had done. Not only had she been spotted outside the willow, now she'd ventured from the wood, which was forbidden, and to make matters worse, revealed herself in a dream to the girl. Of course, she'd panicked and forgotten all of the human language she'd learned. Repeating Pixie could not have helped at all. She was sure the girl would show up underneath the willow again. She was only half right.